I said, ooh, come on, baby, turn the lights off. Ooh, 'cause it's getting late. I said, ooh.
Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Command Center. My name is Richard Weiss. I'm an IDF veteran and I am the founder of Maccabee Media, and it is a pleasure to have you here. I'm just going to enlarge Avi's picture right now. I don't know how. Avi, I'll enlarge you in just a second.
Sure.
In the meantime, I'd like to welcome my co-host, Avi Bramer. And here we go. There's Avi Maximized.
That's maximized view. That's my contractually obligated screen time.
All right. It is. I don't understand why it is not putting both. I had it on here. All right. No. All right. Well, anyways, you guys can hear me and you can see Avi. And we might as well get started right away. Avi, you had some breaking news you wanted to discuss.
Yeah, I thought it would be beneficial to touch quickly on the situation that happened with Joe Kent. Joe Kent was the director of the National Counterterrorism Center for President Trump. He resigned yesterday in a very public way. He put out his resignation letter on Twitter. There were some allegations within that letter of resignation that I think a lot of people will want to talk about. We can dive into that just very quickly. He resigned in protest to the war in Iran. He called it a manufactured by Israel war. He claimed that President Trump was duped by Israel and the Israel lobby in the United States into launching this war that has no benefit for America. And he made some allegations about this wasn't the first manufactured by Israel war, including the Second Gulf War and the war against ISIS. Joe Kent's wife was killed by an ISIS suicide bomber in Manbij, Syria. And he called that a manufactured war by Israel. So I'm not really sure if he's alleging the entire ISIS war was manufactured, but he made some pretty bad claims. So people will want to respond. This is a situation where I think, and we'll dive into this in a future podcast, but I think this is just a good opportunity where sometimes it's best to let sleeping dogs lie. Joe Kent's background reads like an action hero. He was an Army Ranger, a Green Beret. He served in a unit called the Activity. Like, those are the guys that are on the ground behind enemy lines before the really elite guys go on the ground behind enemy lines. So he's had an illustrious military career. And if you go after him, you're only going to anger the wrong crowd. The truth is that he's going to get his 15 minutes of fame. He's going to do Tucker Carlson's podcast. He's going to do all the woke right podcast circuit, and then he's going to fade to the background. And if you attack him, you're only going to anger the global war on terror veterans who you don't want to anger. So this is a situation where if anyone ever wanted to talk about it, I would suggest, if I was your PR person, I would say his record as a warfighter is beyond reproach. His service and sacrifice for America should be honored. Wish him well in all his future endeavors.
Honestly, I can't say I disagree with you at all. He seems to be half right and half wrong. I don't know, but if he wants, I mean, maybe, yeah, he should kind of be gone with himself.
But yeah, I think sometimes we feel the urge to respond to everything. I think this is an opportunity where you just, yeah, he did 11 combat tours. Like he's a soldier, and you don't bash him if you want to get into the nitty gritty of the things he said, which obviously I disagree with what he said, and it's very disheartening for me because I was a big Joe Kent fan for his service and what he did, and I liked his appointment and where he was for Trump. But yeah, it's disheartening, but I think this is a good situation where we can just say thank you, goodbye, good luck, and see you never.
Now, I think we're at a time right now where we have a lot of people, like a lot of alliances are kind of being, the card deck of alliances are being reshuffled. And people that used to be in alliance with each other are kind of parting ways and finding new alliances and kind of finding new kind of purposes, if you will, new priorities, new policies. And it's kind of a little bit concerning to me that, in a lot of cases, not just on the left anymore, that a lot of these people are moving away from their support of Israel and not just blaming, Israelis and Zionists, which they shouldn't to begin with, but kind of blaming all of Jews in general for something in their head that isn't right. It's like,
yeah, I think, and it would be a fascinating discussion to have on a future podcast, but I think the mainstream media became so untrusted that from that, people in the media created the new media and went into podcasts. But it's the same, it's the same people who were in media though, right?
yeah,
So you have, the media was all about getting ratings. Now the new media is about getting clicks on your videos. So it's the same manipulation. It's the same jump from hot topic to hot topic. And the main attraction right now is ribbing Israel. And that's where the money is. That's where the clicks are. And that's where they're going. And I mean, it would be a fascinating topic to dive into, and we'll get to that in a future podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't want to derail this one for that topic today.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to point out that JP Sears is one of those. He just put out a podcast, "Is Zionism Bad?" And as soon as I start with the Rothschild conspiracies, you know where it's going, and that's where he went. So there, another chump off the list that I used to follow. So I like you mentioned about mainstream media and their legacy. In our next clip, I'm going to show something from Emily Schrader. Now, Emily Schrader is brilliant. She's one of the anchors on ILTV. She also does work for JNS, the Jewish News Service. She's a human rights activist. And pardon me for saying so, but I think she's absolutely brilliant. So the next clip I'm going to play is of her. It's a bit of a lengthy one, about 8 minutes long. And this is her explaining about mainstream media and what's up with that and her take.
There for CNN, Christiane Amanpour ran a segment about the Iran-Iraq war in which the Islamic regime sent children across minefields as human shields. Now, thousands of children were given plastic keys and sent to walk across landmines so that soldiers wouldn't have to. This is one of the most horrific crimes in the regime's history, and there's a lot of crimes. But instead of presenting this as a war crime against children, the segment framed it as a symbol of national devotion and love for the regime. Children being sent to their deaths was presented as a heartwarming story. Check this out.
President Trump called for Iran's military to lay down its arms or face certain death. But he and his war planners had failed to understand or remember the strong religious fervor that commits millions to face death in the name of their faith and guarding their Islamic revolution. So we dug into the archives to find In the Name of God, the incredible series based on exclusive footage acquired by CNN in the 80s at the height of the Iran-Iraq War. In this piece, we see a boy, Mohammed, at the very most 17 years old, probably younger, who was recruited for the front by Iran's paramilitary, the Basij. His family bid him a fond farewell, knowing that he would likely be martyred, for one of these children's missions would be acting as human minesweepers.
These kids just received 2 weeks training and just how to shoot with the guns, and they send them to battlefield using them for the field to destroy it.
Landmines have been the focus of much outcry in this war, specifically the use of human minesweepers, waves of young volunteers going to their deaths, paving the way for tanks that are in short supply.
And if that wasn't enough, Amanpour then hosted Reza Aslan, who confidently declared that Iranians are now rallying around the flag in support of the regime. Take a look.
And death starts raining down from the skies, what tends to happen is that people rally to their government regardless of how much they hate their government.
Really? That same old tired and disproven trope? Because the images we actually see coming from Iranians in the streets of Iran and across the diaspora show something very, very different. The flag the Iranians are waving isn't the flag of the Islamic Republic. It's the lion and sun flag, the flag of Iran before the 1979 revolution, the symbol of Iran, the Iran they hope to rebuild after the regime is gone. But if you watch that segment, you would never know that. And CNN wasn't the only outlet having a bad week. Over at Haaretz, the paper ran a profile of Ali Larijani with the remarkable headline, "Ruthless Leader, Brilliant Philosopher Ali Larijani, Iran's Most Powerful Man." Brilliant philosopher? This is the same regime official who has been sanctioned and plays a central role in the regime's oppression of Iranians as well as terror activities. Instead of presenting him as one of the architects of that repression, the article portrayed him as some sort of intellectual statesman to humanize his image. Over in the UK, Channel 4 continued the embarrassing war reporting by claiming that Israel had shut down access to Al-Aqsa Mosque during Ramadan for Muslims. Except that's not at all what happened. The restrictions in question were Home Front Command civil defense guidelines that apply to everyone in Israel during periods of heavy ballistic missile fire. They require people to remain within a certain distance of a bomb shelter, and they prohibit large gatherings, to prevent mass casualties in war. And yet somehow the report framed it as a religious persecution. But perhaps the most morally disturbing example this week came after the attempted terror attack on a Jewish school in Michigan. On March 12th, the Lebanese-American man rammed a vehicle packed with explosives into Temple, Israel in West Bloomfield, Michigan. Now, the building contained a preschool with more than 140 children inside at the time. 140 children were in that building. Now, in somewhat of a miracle, the attacker was killed after security responded and prevented what could have been a terrible mass casualty terror attack. But instead of universal condemnation, what we're seeing in response from some parts of the media is something else entirely. On GV News, for example, commentator Angelina McCahey suggested that the synagogue may have been targeted because it aligns with Israel and because Israel is in its name. Check this out.
Have these attacks been predominantly against Jewish targets?
Well, I can't really speak on that directly. I can say that this situation, this was an Israeli temple. It was aligned with Israel. I will say that.
A Jewish temple?
A Jewish temple.
Jewish synagogue is not an Israeli temple.
It's called the Real Israel Temple.
They're Jewish.
Okay.
They're the people of Israel.
How do you? So I just finished my point. So
it was wrong from the premise. They're not Israeli. They're Jewish.
So they're called the Real Israeli Temple, yes, and they do align with Israel and their beliefs. So this attack. Also, what we found out from the guy who attacked them was that he did have family in Lebanon that was killed from strikes, and that was confirmed. We don't know whether or not who those family members were, but it was posted on social media, his social media, the night prior to the attack, that it was actually his family and his kids that were killed.
I'm almost speechless in response to the level of stupidity here. Think about how insane that argument is. First off, to be so insanely ignorant that you don't understand a synagogue called Temple Israel has nothing to do with the modern day state of Israel. And second, to bring that up as if it's somehow relevant or mitigating when someone drives a truck full of explosives into a children's school in America because they are Jews. What year are we living in? Also, bringing up the fact that he has relatives who died in Lebanon is completely irrelevant, but even more so when you understand that his family are in Hezbollah and his brother was actually a Hezbollah commander. So it's not at all surprising since Hezbollah has been attacking Israelis nonstop since joining the war. This isn't analysis. It's an attempt to remove responsibility from the terrorist and shift it to the victim. And yes, holding American Jews responsible for the policies of a country thousands of miles away that they don't even live in is anti-Semitism. Sadly, the moral confusion didn't stop there this week. The New York Times ran headlines that sounded less like reporting on a terrorist attack and more like a character profile. A restaurant worker was a quiet presence. Then he attacked a synagogue. In other words, the story wasn't the terrorist trying to massacre Jewish children. The story was humanizing the terrorist. And if you wonder where Angelina on GB News got this idiotic idea about Temple Israel, well, look how the New York Times titled the story about this synagogue. Temple Israel was founded in 1941, dedicated to the formation of a Jewish state. What? A house of worship in Michigan's defining trait is being dedicated to forming a Jewish state? Unfortunately, this same narrative of how the terrorist family members were killed in Lebanon was also pushed by Dropsite News, a media network funded through Soros-connected networks, which amplified stories designed to generate sympathy for the attacker, a narrative that was quickly echoed by useful idiots like Megyn Kelly. Now, the most insane part about all of this, though, is that even if the synagogue was owned by the Israeli government and was full of IDF soldiers, so what? You still don't have a right to drive a truck full of explosives into a house of worship. Why are we even debating this? Only when it comes to anti-Semitic attacks, we hear this endless excuse-making and posturing, oh, Israel, shut up already. This is how extremism gets normalized, not through open support of terrorism, but through the slow introduction of excuses.
All right, so that's pretty well what I wanted to show from Emily. She's something else. I think she's absolutely brilliant, and I think that there's a lot to unpack there. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it goes to, we've seen this a lot before with the media and the framing of arguments, but it goes to something larger at play when you look at the media and you look at specifically how those headlines are written. They're written in a deliberate fashion, and she's right about that. I can't remember if it was the Washington Post or the New York Times in their obituary of Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS. They called him an austere religious scholar, which is a unique way of describing a terrorist leader who oversaw actual crucifixions in modern times. But these are written deliberately. It's a whole, we could get into it, and we might as well get into it now. That's how the media has been formed, and a lot of that goes to where are journalists coming from, what schools are they coming from, where is the funding for those schools coming from, and it's a deliberate attempt to change and drive opinion. That's what the media is now. It's not a source for news. This is what happened. They're going to drive opinion, and it's going to be driven by people who come in with an agenda. And that's where we're at. So she's 100% in that. And yeah, some of that is ridiculous framing, but I mean, to expect anything less from Christiane Amanpour at this point, that's like if you thought you were gonna turn on Christiane Amanpour's show on CNN and see a fair and balanced attempt to explain the Middle East, I've got a bridge to sell you over the Nile River. Like, yeah, it's par for the course at this point, I think.
Yeah, I can agree with you there. I mean, this is what we can expect from someone like Amanpour. It's something we can expect from the entire CNN network. It's something you can expect from the New York Times. But actually, to see it from GB News, this is another example of like the right wing turning on us as well. A good friend of mine, Ron Easton, I'm sure you'll agree with what he has to say. He says, and I say this a lot, anti-Semitism is a three-headed monster. You've got the traditional right wing, like the swamp of the right wing anti-Semites, like the David Dukes and the Tiki Torch losers. You've got on the left the woke supremacists, and now you've got the Muslim anti-Semites as well. For quite some time, the anti-Semites on the right had retreated to the swamp and had hidden themselves, but they've all come out of the swamp, and they're definitely rearing their ugly teeth at us, and it's not pleasant. It's not something that I want to stick around to see what's going to happen next about.
Yeah, it's an issue. I mean, one thing it's definitely a factor and something that Jews pay attention to, and the hope is that other people do pay attention to. One thing that I will say so I've always appreciated Jew hatred when it's out in the open. Like, I'd much rather you just come out and say Jews than hide behind code words or dog whistles or other sort of arguments. So I've always found something refreshing about like right-wing anti-Semitism, because there's no hiding it. Like, there are some people who hate Jews and they'll tell you that, and that's great. There's other people who will hide behind code words. They'll talk about, instead of talking about Jewish money, they'll talk about Zionist money. They'll swap words, but it's the same argument. One thing that I am noticing more of is that right-wing anti-Semitism is spoken out against and combated more by thought leaders on the right than I feel like it is on the left. Now, I will concede that may be from my following more right of center journalists and columnists and reading more right of center publications. That 100% could be, but I'm not seeing it as much in the mainstream. So for me, that's one thing that I would like to see more of, and I would like it to be more out in the open, is combating the hatred, because you can't let it fester. It's just one of those things. It's coming from all,
from every direction.
Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right.
I mean, at least on the right, just further to your point, like the Ben Shapiros of the right, and so on and so forth, and the Dave Rubins, and even the Donald Trumps, they call out the anti-Semitism on both the left and the right, and when it comes from our cousins from the other parts of the Middle East. On the left, they'll call it out on the right, so long as it hides the anti-Semitism from the left. And they generally won't call out the anti-Semitism coming from the Arabs, because it goes against their narrative that the Arabs are always the victim and we're the oppressors, white colonizers, etc.
Yeah, a lot of the discourse around anti-Semitism and Jew hate, I like just calling it Jew hate. Anti-Semitism, you always get that person who pushes back, but we're Arabs, are Semites too. And so just, call it Jew hate. That's right. That's what it is, the Jew hate. It's just, we're in it's a pandemic of Jew hate. It's not rising levels of anti-Semitism. We're seeing a pandemic of Jew hate. And people always talk about it as being the canary in the coal mine, that it doesn't end with the Jews in societies that tolerate Jew hate and let it explode into violence. It leads that society to a dark place. And it's something that needs to be called out no matter where it comes from. And it's important. And there are ways to do it, and there are times to do it, like we talked about with Joe Kent, and in a podcast, maybe in a future podcast, maybe we'll bring on some experts in messaging that we can have those discussions. But yeah, it's something that is, you see it every day. Again, Jews are going to be more in tune to it, and we're going to pick it up and we're going to notice it more. But more and more people are seeing it and calling it out, because it's really the number one conversation every day now in the media is something to do with Israel, and that always leads to bad places. Yeah, to get back to that idea of, you know, right-wing anti-Semitism or right-wing Jew hatred being more in your face and direct. You'll see a lot of, on the left, you'll see a lot of people talking about removing people who have anything to do with Zionism or anything to do with Israel. And you're basically asking Jewish people to deny a major part of the religion. Now, the Israeli government is not the land of Israel, so let's not take words out of context. But the idea of Israel and the concept of Israel plays a major, is the major part of Judaism. And the idea that you're going to tell Jews that to be part of this party moving forward, you need to remove yourself from Israel and all things Israel, is an insane thing to ask, and it's wrong, full stop. And that kind of stuff needs to be called out on the left. And yeah, I mean, people will always say, you know, Rich, I'm just criticizing the Israeli government. That doesn't make me an anti-Semite. I just don't like Bibi Netanyahu's policies. You can hate Bibi Netanyahu's policies. You can hate the policies of the Israeli government. If you sat down at a family discussion we would have at dinner talking about Israeli politics, you would come away being like, oh my God, that guy hates Bibi Netanyahu. You're allowed to. You can criticize as much as you want. It's where you go with your next sentence, which is always the most important thing. So is when people call the war in Gaza the worst crime against humanity in the history of modern times, that's hyperbole, and that's not criticism of government policy. That's making a blanket statement about an event in a way to cause people to turn against that country, because it's not the worst atrocity in the history of modern times.
It's not in the top 100.
Those are the realities. You can criticize Israeli policy. You can criticize how much Israel comes up in politics in the United States. I've always said I would love to see a presidential debate, or when they have the debates to determine the leaders of each party, I would love to see a primary debate where Israel doesn't come up. There is always a question about Israel and its outsized role, but it also has an outside role because people just keep talking about it. So we talked about it last time. I would love nothing more than for Israel to just not be a topic of conversation. Yeah. I think that would suit everyone well. But this is, for the time being, this is the world. This is the world we're in right now.
Right now, people need to be talking about Iran and what's going on there, and what's been going on there, not just since the uprising began around Christmas time, but for the last 47 years, how these people have had zero rights and have been literally held hostage by the worst regime on the planet since the Nazis. And you can quote me on that. Like anytime anything comes out that's against Israel or the Jews, we have to prove our innocence, because the accusations are taken carte blanche as fact, while the truth has to be proven. Like, while anyone else, he's not like anyone who will call out, well, they're innocent until we can prove them guilty.
Yeah.
And it's a horrible double standard. And I don't know. Do you? I mean, I think so. Do you think something? Do you think this can get people killed, or at least seriously hurt?
I think it just builds. It stokes fires. That's the issue. Is if you repeat a lie all the time, and if
it becomes Palestine,
right, it becomes what people understand. And so one of the things that came up with the attack on the synagogue was every single person immediately puts out the line, there is no room for anti-Semitism in America. There is no room for anti-Semitism in Canada. There's no room for anti-Semitism in England. That's the standard boilerplate line. That is the equivalent of thoughts and prayers. Mm-hmm. When people say thoughts and prayers, that's what it is, because they're not going to change the thing. So you have, if a politician comes out and spends every day for 2 years accusing Israel of intentionally slaughtering, and they have a thirst for blood, and they're out for blood, and they're slaughtering, and you say that over and over and over again, is that going to get someone killed? I don't think you can draw a direct line, but there's too many people in today's society who are shut in, who get all their news sources from one follow on Twitter or one account on TikTok. And they're at home, right? And they're whatever their life is, and they're hearing every single day, Israel is slaughtering children, is slaughtering children. It stokes a fire. And you do get incidences. So can you draw a direct line? No, but a society that tolerates constant lies, it can't lead anywhere good. So if a politician is always right, Bernie Sanders accuses Bibi Netanyahu of genocide all the time. If someone who follows Bernie Sanders commits murder, is Bernie Sanders responsible for that individual committing murder? No. Would I advise Bernie Sanders to maybe watch how he says certain things because of what it can inspire? Sure, that's a conversation. The issue when it comes to Israel is it's everywhere. It's every channel. It's every publication. It's every podcast. It's everywhere, and it's the same thing over and over. And that's where we get in trouble. That's how I see it.
I think that someone who's kind of new to all this and is just tuning in, like not to the podcast, but to the world event. If someone's just tuning into it right now, they would think that people hate Jews because of Israel, which I think you and I know very well that it's the other way around. People hate Israel because of Jews, right? Like Israel is the collective Jew, and God forbid the collective Jew should defend itself. They prefer us wearing yellow pajamas in concentration camps than defending ourselves and succeeding as a nation.
I mean, that's people.
It's like 100 years ago.
They say people love dead Jews, not strong Jews. Now look, we'll have a podcast one day where we'll do the criticisms of Israel, because you know from personal experience, I could talk for hours about criticisms of Israel and the government. We could fill a year's worth of podcasts if we wanted to. And if someone was tuning in with no knowledge, they might watch that podcast and be like, holy, that guy hates Jews. That'll be another podcast for another day. But it's important that we have nuance. Mm-hmm. Like, the world is not black and white. The world is multiple shades of gray, and everything is nuanced. And you have to be able to view that. And this idea of talking in 100% factualities when it comes to things, it leads to bad places. And that's the main issue. like Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, who's going to run for president for the Democrats. He's going to most likely be the Democrat nominee. And then depending who he faces, he could be the next president of the United States. He soft launched his presidential bid by moving towards the far extreme elements of the left. And my criticism of that was he's getting bad political advice. Because I think what he should be is the hardworking, experienced politician who knows that the world is all sorts of shades of gray, and to thrive, you need nuance, and you have to be able to live in the nuance. And that would be my advice to him, is to just don't let everyone else, right? Like when the Democrats have their primary for president, the main topic of that primary is going to be the candidates trying to prove that they hate Israel more than all the other candidates. That's going to be the number one topic. They're not going to talk about the economy. They're not going to talk about jobs. They're not going to talk about anything. It's going to be a race to see who can punish Israel more. That will be the Democratic primary, and people can bookmark this podcast. And when the primaries happen, you can come back and say, Avi, you were right, because I'm positive that's what's going to happen. And we need and I think the politician who doesn't play that game will have the advantage.
I think worst case scenario would be the Michelle Obama throwing her hat in the ring because she'll win.
She would win. I think she'd win any election.
And she's just Barack's puppet. Maybe Barack is her puppet.
I'd be curious to see what an independent Michelle Obama political campaign would be like. But yeah, she would jump immediately. It's a tough time right now because it's everywhere, and I hate that it's everywhere. Like it's silly, and it's the only conflict. The Iran war is one thing. This is a major conflict that covers a strait that accounts for the majority of oil for the most of the world. It's a hot topic issue. It's a war in the Middle East. That's going to get coverage. I have no problem with there being coverage of Iran. But when Israel goes to war anywhere, it's every newscast. It doesn't matter, local, national, what country, every attack, every bombing, there is on the ground coverage of it with exact casualty figures 5 seconds after the bombing has happened. And it's everywhere, and it saturates the market. That's an issue. Like there's a major ground war in Ukraine, and the war is covered, but you don't get on the ground cell phone footage from Ukrainian cities on the same level that you get out of Gaza.
Because the Hamas Ministry of Health doesn't work in Ukraine.
The Ukrainians should probably hire them to do their PR, and they'd be more successful with their messaging maybe. But no, like I have no problem. The Iran war should be covered, and the Iran war should be questioned. 100%. You should ask questions about why is America going to war? Why is this happening now? Those are fascinating topics, and any government that takes soldiers to war should have to answer those questions. There's no problem with that. The issue that I have with the coverage of the Iran war is it's being covered as if Iran is winning the war. If you watch the news coverage, it's just all about America is running out of interceptor missiles. Iran is doing a good job strategically hitting these. You wouldn't know that they've lost 200 of their highest ranking members.
They're also not differentiating IRGC members from civilians. They're not showing the civilians cheering the good guys on.
Yeah, they're not talking about which targets are being hit. They're not talking in the hearings today in the Senate where they were interviewing the head of the CIA and Tulsi Gabbard and others, right? It's come out that Israel and the United States believe that they've destroyed 70% of the missile launchers. That's a remarkable accomplishment in a country that vast, with that much mountainous terrain. To have done that in less than 3 weeks is a huge accomplishment. They've killed most of the senior leadership,
Top two
most
levels.
of most of the IRGC. There was the story that came out that they believed that the IRGC had planned down to like the 7th level of command. Well, you're getting pretty deep into your bench when you're relying on the 7th ranking member of every single department to do things. Like you're scraping the bench. Like that's like a basketball team starting to call in the water boy. Like you're getting down to it there. And
I mean, to put it into Winnipeg hockey terms, sorry for those of you not from Winnipeg, but this is like the Jets calling up from like St. Paul's High School.
We want the right amount, the right coverage. And the right coverage doesn't mean you have to be rah Israel. I don't want the coverage to be rah Israel. Like I hate when people I don't need people to be pro-Israel. I don't think there's for sure Jews who are asking everyone to be pro-Israel. My personal opinion on this is I don't need someone to be pro-Israel. Israel is a tiny country on the other side of the world. You honestly shouldn't have an opinion about Israel. It would be weird for everyone to have an opinion of Israel. Like if you ask me what is my opinion of Thailand, I wouldn't have an opinion of Thailand. I can't tell you what I think of the political makeup of New Zealand. Like, you don't need an opinion. Everyone has an opinion on Israel. But it shouldn't be like that. I don't need you to be pro-Israel. I don't care if you're anti-Israel. You can be anti-Israel. You can hate Bibi Netanyahu. You can think everything Israel does is wrong. But the moment you start talking about the Zionist occupation of the government, we've moved far past criticism of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
We've now moved into Joseph Goebbels' level of good old-fashioned Jew hatred. And that's the main issue that's the issue I have. So people always say, is it possible to criticize Israel without being called an anti-Semite? 1,000,000%. And I'm happy to explain the 1,000,000 different ways you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's always, what's that next sentence after your first complaint?
Right? I've criticized policy before, and I think I'm the most pro-Israel person I know. And I've criticized some policy in the past. Israel's not perfect.
It's far from it perfect. And that's the thing is, and it goes to a topic for another day on politics and culture in general. The world has become a team sport. And you cheer for your team, and your team is infallible. They can never be wrong. They can never make a mistake. We are perfect. And the problem is everyone else. That's not how the world works. So criticize Israel. I encourage people to criticize Israel. I criticize Israel. I'm telling you, if you listened to me talk about Israel, you would think that I was an anti-Zionist at times. Because criticism is healthy. It's what are you criticizing? What are your arguments for that criticism? And so forth, right? That Senk guy on the Young Turks, the guy who gets all sweaty and screamy all the time, he always talks about how Israel is the worst offender in history. He's never seen in his lifetime a worse offender than the state of Israel. Okay, that's hyperbole, and that's not criticism of Israel.
He's in it for the clicks.
Yeah,
he's not there to share information. He's in it for the clicks.
That's the issue. That gets back to the issue with the media and the video earlier with coverage and how things are framed. It's not about. Most people don't even read the articles, they read the headlines. And that's That
The headlines in the
that's
first
inten-
print paragraph.
that's intentional. Like, yeah, that guy who failed spectacularly at trying to kill Jews in Michigan lost family members. Okay. I mean, they were members of Hezbollah, so let's put an asterisk next to the loss. His brothers were members of Hezbollah. They did lose. There were youngsters that were killed in that bombing, though, and that's horrible. But loss can't lead to violence. There was a woman who died on October 7th in Israel who lived close to the Gaza Strip. And she died in such a horrific manner that when her family buried her, they did not bury her whole. That's all we can say. She wasn't buried whole. You can use your imagination for what that means. Her family in North America suffered a great loss. They lost their mother in the most horrific way. The pain they must be feeling. But if that family loaded an AR-15 with a full round of magazines, filled gas cans and fireworks and put them in the back of their truck, and tried to drive their car into a preschool at a mosque, they would be terrorists.
And we would rightfully call them out.
Full stop. Full stop. Terrorist. No excuse in the world, period, end of story.
Mm-hmm.
Personal tragedy cannot be used to justify horrific action.
The Nazis killed, my grandfather had 11 brothers and sisters. After the Holocaust, there were 3 of them left. Does that mean I should go to Europe with bomb belts? Like, it's the same thing. I don't blame anyone in Europe today for what happened to my grandparents. They're not the same people. They might be their descendants, but they're not the same people. The people that are there today are not the ones that shoved our grandparents into cattle cars and put them into gas chambers or in front of firing squads. Those aren't the same people. And let me tell you something about Germany. They're good people there. They have learned from their ways of the past. And I don't think if something like that ever happens again, it won't be by them.
No. It's also, this guy's family were members of Hezbollah. Yep. So if his actions were driven by pain and suffering and a need for revenge, get on a plane, fly to Beirut, rent a car, drive to southern Lebanon, call up one of your brother's buddies who are in Hezbollah, and go fight the Israeli soldiers that are in southern Lebanon. Yep. That's who killed your family. That's who's responsible. Go attack soldiers. Yeah. If you want to go attack a soldier, right? If there's an Israeli soldier in southern Lebanon, go attack them. They're in the army doing military maneuvers. That's the target for your rage. If that's what you're driven by, go to Lebanon and fight the Israelis in Lebanon. You can't kill Jewish people in Michigan. Like, it can't be tolerated. And I understand people will say, well, we just like to know motivating factors. Okay? But you're not a scholar. You're not writing a scholarly paper trying to understand motivating factors. You're looking for a justification.
Yeah. And that's the thing. They're taking a motivation and turning it into an excuse for a reason, for something to get people behind me on. Who's with me?
And that's right. That's the thing. The one of the youngsters who threw the bomb outside the anti-Mamdani rally in New York came from a very wealthy family, and it's one of the things that no one talks about, and it's a great conversation. Is a lot of people like to believe that terrorism is driven by anguish and poverty. by suffering. But the truth is, the vast majority of Western terrorists,
rich kids,
are upper middle class. When you look at the breakdown, and we'll find the study for a future podcast, but when you look at the breakdown of kids who left England and France to go to Syria to join ISIS, they come from predominantly middle class households.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lie we tell of terrorism that it's the downtrodden. The truth is the downtrodden are pretty busy working hard to stop being downtrodden. It's the kids who have the time to be on the internet watching those videos over and over again, which gets back to what we were talking about earlier. If all you're watching is videos of a dead baby being told that there is lust for blood by the Israelis, it's going to drive people to act in violent ways.
100%.
It just is. And we should hold the media to a higher standard. I don't think the media is capable of holding themselves to a standard because I think it's all just about clicks, as it's always been. It's been about ratings. Now it's about clicks. But we have to do a better job, and that industry needs to do a better job. Otherwise, Paramount should buy every newspaper and new radio show and news channel in the world and let Barry Weiss just run rampant through the editorial rooms and change the culture as she's doing at CBS. But it's a needed thing.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're getting close to the end. I just want to bring one more thing up, something that I feel is very important. What we're looking at here is something that should concern absolutely everybody. This is a mullah, an Ayatollah from Iran, getting off the plane at the Pearson Airport about a week and a half ago, not just by himself, but with his entire family. And so basically, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant, and then we'll discuss it real quick. And I'll give some background. Basically, recent reports and security warnings indicate that members of the Iranian regime, often referred to as mullahs or agents of the Iranian regime, in political discourse and their supporters are present in Canada, sparking concerns over national security and intimidation within Iranian Canadian communities. Presence and concerns are that 700 plus suspected agents are suspected to be in Canada. These 700 plus individuals are linked to the IRGC. Security officials and advocates have accused Canada of becoming a safe haven for Iranian regime officials who are alleged to be operating, fundraising, and terrorizing the diaspora community. In fact, members of the Iranian regime have been terrorizing Iranian shopkeepers who have posters of the Crown Prince up in their stores. Reports have also identified children of high-ranking Iranian officials living here in Canada. Iranian Canadians have reported instances of intimidations by these individuals, prompting for calls of stricter immigration enforcement and investigations. I got that information from Global News. It also says here that a 2022 policy enables the government to target, sanction, and ban senior officials of the IRGC from entering or staying in Canada as terrorists. The Canadian government has designated the IRGC as a terrorist organization, and the public safety minister has stated that individuals believed to be IRGCs are being investigated, with some already being removed, but I don't see any being removed. Incidents in Little Tehran in North Toronto near Finch, tensions have materialized with incidents of graffiti. This is graffiti by the people kind of fighting back against the mullahs, or it says Marg Barg Mullah, which means death to the mullahs. It's appearing all over the place. Now, this mullah that we're looking at the airport is a cleric who is identified as, I'm going to try and read his name here, Hojatul Islam, with like 2 J's, Mortiza Tayebi. And he is basically, he was here to lead the Al-Quds parade last weekend. The footage of him getting off the airport has sparked debate and concern among many groups and analysts regarding the presence of individuals associated with terrorism here in Canada. It's almost as if we have these people coming in here and nobody's really doing anything at all to stop them from coming in. And anybody who is concerned, anybody who has children should be concerned.
It's a big issue with this country. When you take your eyes off the wheel, these things happen, and it's been talked about for a long time. This isn't a new issue for Canada. Very lax immigration when it comes to certain parts of the world. We're more relaxed with our immigration, and bad actors are going to take advantage. That is something that's going to happen, and it's been happening with the IRGC, with members of the regime. As the situation gets worse there, they're going to look where to go. And where are they going to go? You're going to go where there's other people from your ilk. And that's Toronto, and that's Vancouver, and that's other parts of Canada. And it's a known fact. And it's too bad that CSIS doesn't have more. I bet most Canadians don't even know that CSIS exists, the Canadian Intelligence Service. But they're very big on what's happening. There's no political willpower to throw anyone out.
They're really big in Japan.
They're big in Japan. There's no willpower to throw them out. People, they're coming here, they're fundraising, they're starting to terrorize the diaspora community to keep them quiet. And that's a major issue. If we're going to take Iranian refugees in, let's take the anti-regime refugees. But most people will Canadian officials who love a good underdog story will say, oh, well, this guy's an Iranian refugee. We will do no background checks whatsoever. No, the lady who took that video was visited by the police for filming in.
You're not allowed to film at the airport?
You're not allowed to film arrivals at the airport, apparently.
Really?
Who knows? But this is right. Yeah, he's off the plane and then leading the Al-Quds rally in Toronto.
Thank God someone filmed that.
Yeah.
It
should be. Yeah, it should be talked about, and it should be dealt with. Canada shouldn't be a safe haven for bad actors, and I don't think that should be a controversial thing to say. Like we shouldn't be a safe haven for bad actors. They shouldn't be able to come here and fundraise and organize. It's not how it should be. And it shouldn't be a topic that only a small number of people are talking about. And unfortunately it is. And yeah, it's a good thing that this lady took that video and it spread, because it should be dealt with. If you're a member of the Iranian Islamic regime, which just butchered thousands of their own civilians, you shouldn't be granted asylum in Canada.
No, they should be back in Iran in Iran facing justice when the proper flag is raised.
Yeah. Or if there's another country if another country wants to take them, that's for another country's citizens to have that debate, right? If France wants to take them, right? They took the Ayatollah before when he fled. Right, he was living in Paris, right? So, if France wants to take the regime officials, they can. But Canada, 100%, we should not be taking them in, and that shouldn't be a controversial thing to say.
No, it shouldn't. It's I guess also there's lots of room for them in Siberia. So I just want a little bit of breaking news. There were 4 deaths on the 4 deaths. This is from Ron East from JTV and the J.ca. 4 women killed near Hebron, Arabic media reports that 4 women have been killed so far in an Arab town near Hebron following the latest barrage of missiles from Iran. So, I mean, these missiles, they're targeting. They're not targeting Israeli military.
They don't discriminate against the civil, right? The civilian, and that's the thing that I want to have a podcast on. The topic that is never discussed when Israel is discussed, the Arab Israeli population. That's a topic that we should talk about because it's important. They don't get a voice and they don't have a say and they're not talked about. They're kind of just ignored when everyone discusses Israel, Palestine. But yeah, that area is very dense. There's not a lot of room in Israel and the territories. And those missiles don't discriminate when they fall from the sky.
No.
Right? You fire a missile towards Tel Aviv, it's not guaranteed you're going to hit, like you're not,
you might hit Jaffa.
They're not searching in, they're not searching out Jewish DNA. Like they're going to fall. And in the Palestinian territories don't have structures like they do in Green Line Israel to protect Israeli Jews, Arabs, Muslims, Christians in Israel. So when they fall in the Palestinian territories, so you see a lot most of the time. It happened in the last missile exchange in 2024. The majority of casualties end up being the people that the Iranian regime are claiming that they're defending. Yeah, that's horrific that they look. And here's a criticism. This goes into line with my idea of like what can you criticize Israel? Yeah. Palestinians in and around Hebron probably have a lot of things that they're dealing with in life. It's probably not the easiest time to be a Palestinian in the West Bank in that area. The last thing they need are Iranian missiles falling on them.
I mean, okay, but is it up to us or is it up to the PA to build their bomb shelters?
It should be up to the PA. They should stop paying people, right? Stop paying people a salary when you kill an Israeli. But we'll dive into this because we're running late. So we'll dive into this in a future podcast. But if I were the Prime Minister of Israel, I would present a plan to I would present a plan to fund and build the shelters for the Palestinians in the West Bank. Let them say no to bomb shelters. But yeah, no, it's like that's the casualties, right? Palestinians in the West Bank have enough to deal with. They don't need to deal with Iranian missiles. And Iranian missiles don't discriminate when they're launched towards civilian populations. And that's the tragic irony of this for everyone cheering on the destruction rained by Iran. It's affecting the people you've been claiming to advocate for the last two plus years. So,
I mean, we could go on and on about Iran, with the regime firing cluster bomb, using cluster munitions and all that, but that's for another episode. We're over an hour, so I think this is a good place to sign off. I'm really happy with how this episode turned out. We'll be back on Sunday, same time. And I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And keep well until the next episode. And that is that for now. And I wish everyone all of the best. We are Maccabee Media, and now